Well, I got to take a whack at putting a presentation together, and the thing I do a little differently than Dan is like I put things in a deck and I kind of do like a linear story. So it's not quite as much like Fig Jam, like three-dimensional kind of like exploration as much as it is like let's kind of cascade like decision making and then have like conversation throughout. So fortunately there is no playground to like zoom around, but I'll do my best to make sure that we're still getting like quite expansive. And again, just kind of like doing the diamond thinking of like, here's the options. What do we like?
Yep. Totally fine by me.
Amazing.
I kind of hate the way that Dan does it.
They did put in like a canvas view within presentation mode. So we could do that if you want to later, but yeah.
No, I mean, if we're being honest, I hate Figma, period. So, yeah, whatever.
Well, Mark, that's a good, one of the things I want to try with design.
Yeah. What is Derek like?
What do I like? Pen and paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Pen and paper. I guess it's like, it's a necessary evil, that we have to use these things. So
it's undefeated.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do is recap because it's been a moment and I needed to even refresh myself as I was going through this. So I looked at the Fig Jam we had really like poured quite a lot of time into, and I wanted to just pull out like everything that had a heart, like verbally or literally.
Yeah.
That kind of corresponded with what I really wanted to focus on today, which is like the dot itself.
Okay.
But I didn't pull the cityscapes as much as I pulled like everything related to dots. What we liked were things that were hand-drawn, generated, deterministic, even thinking about what would it look like if the dots are irregular. We really liked these motion tests, but obviously they depend on implementation. So if there's a lot happening all at once, like you see here, it's going to be too busy. This was especially loved, like the idea that a dot can kind of expand and turn into a modal and like reveal and conceal like more and less fidelity of information based on the context. I forget the name of this app, but this sort of like fanning behavior again to sort of show information hierarchy and cascading.
That was
Path, correct. And then I pulled this from Safe, like the way that they sort of use like their atomic unit at its simplest form and how again it like scales in complexity. So just thinking again about how this has to be a framework that helps us make decisions moving forward. I know what we should avoid are things like motion blurs, but overall things that just feel a little too busy. And then faces, we had a whole conversation about they're just hard to get right. Sometimes they come across as too cheesy, and like the emoji aesthetic is like a big X on it.
Yep.
So I kind of started to think myself about what is our temperature check? Like what is a dot and what is not a dot, or what do we not want dots to be? So I think they're individual, but they're not necessarily interchangeable. They have a degree of uniqueness to them. They're genuine. They should not be cheesy. They're expressive. They should not feel generic. They shouldn't feel like an interface. They should feel like something with a bit of a personality to it. Playful, not spammy. Crafted, hand-drawn, not generated or mechanical. Purposeful, not decorative, which is going to be interesting because I think that'll be like a big fault line for our feedback today.
Yeah.
Timeless, not trendy. So we want to be thinking long-term about like the decisions and will they stand the test of time. And again, scalable framework and not like one of one, every dot is bespoke.
Yep. So I think and I appreciate you calling out the full line of purposeful versus decorative. I think that's an important one. I think another one is individual versus interchangeable. The reason I say that is because when you think about a city, obviously native is, we are individuals within the city, but we start to aggregate into cohorts pretty easily, right? Like you have your small group of people that you see on a regular basis, whether that's like baristas or bartenders or, your friends or the waiter or waitress at the restaurant that you frequent, et cetera. And so like there is this individual where every dot is kind of its own thing, but it's also every dot also belongs to this larger framework of native. And they share a lot of the same, quote unquote DNA. I think that will be a important kind of balance to get right as well.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I think that's a great call out.
Jordan, I can take notes too, since you're driving at the moment.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So something else that I like to do is just take a peek at like who else is solving similar problems and what can we kind of like cross apply from their solutions and sort of reverse engineer what they're solving.
Yep.
So one that felt kind of related was Waze, because obviously it's a city. But I think that they also do a really great job at letting you like wear your heart on your sleeve. So this example on the left, like you can choose your Waze personality or your like driving mood, and it becomes your avatar. And they have anything from like horoscopes to like literal moves to like kind of silly, like fun things. Like there's aliens or there's like movie themes sometimes.
Yep.
So you can kind of choose like an emotional like shorthand for who you are at that point, and then you can see it on the map. So it's like big in this little like scrolling thing, it's big on your profile, and then on the map it's like kind of small. So it's a scalable framework, and it gives you like a bit of emotional parity with your little like driver character. And then with all these little things on the map, it's still easy to be like, okay, I have to turn left here. Like you still need to get the information you need to operate a motor vehicle.
Yeah, aesthetics aside, I think that's a good call out and a good analog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because yeah, these aren't aesthetic references so much as they are like problems, solutions.
Yep.
Next one is Duolingo, obviously, and I focus specifically on like the avatar that you create as you begin to get onboarded into the system. Man, I don't know why these videos don't loop.
It's okay. I saw it.
Okay. Basically, it's a pretty simple, like you start out with a person who's like a mannequin and you choose their glasses or their eye color, you choose their hair, their skin color, their shirt, like all these accessories. So it's just kind of like you personalize and build your little character, which is like a pretty straightforward logic.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other one that was interesting, LLMs tend to use like circles as their characters, and like ChatGPT was interesting in that it had this like marble with like a texture in it that represented like talking, thinking, and different kinds of interactions. Claude just uses like the simple little like loading thing icon to also show that this agent is responding to you. So really just to show you that you're like talking to something and it's like listening and hearing and like responding to your input.
Is that only in voice chat?
Yeah, it's only in the voice chat.
Yeah, because I don't use voice chat. Hadn't seen that, but that's cool.
Yeah, I have like a whole folder of apps that I just go through when I'm doing research. So
we did discuss the no butthole rule, right? Okay.
We didn't, but I am familiar with this rule on my own.
I think that came up early days when me and Jordan first started chatting, because like we went through the butthole arc with native for a minute by accident.
Yeah. It's really easy.
Yeah.
It's really easy. Accidental buttholes. Really easy.
It passes the kid test.
That's true. It does. Yeah.
I'll have to send you. I applied to like some AI company and I applied with a video and I was like, you need to be more than like a butthole logo. And I saw both logos and I never heard back, but I was like,
it's literally every AI company. There's something there, I think.
There is totally something there.
There was that article that came out while we were doing this. I think it was like a sort of icon of a butt in the background and then like all of the AI logos, and I was like, man, this guy killed it.
I made it the thumbnail for my application video. It was something where I was like, I really don't care if I get this, but I like it'll help me like write this essay, so I'll just do it. And then I was like,
yeah,
here if you need
Yeah.
But anyways, so what I want to focus on today, because there's so much complexity, I want to do like a slice of it at a time, is basically 3 different tiers of like what makes a circle feel like a character. So what is going to give it personality? Not where color, but why color? How can we use it strategically? And then non-facial uniqueness. What will help you recognize your dot from across the screen? And now like that's my little guy.
Yep.
And the reason I chose these 3 things is because I'm kind of thinking about like how this is gonna scale. And I think it's like there's a 100-foot view and there's like 100,000-foot view. So at the 100-foot view, it's like you want to be able to see personality and emotions, which on a person, it's kind of like their face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I want to start. But then at the 1,000-foot view, it's like you're going to want to see the status of your dot. What is it doing? Which is more like the full person. Like, what is their body doing? What motion are they taking? What's happening? At the 10,000-foot view, that's social behavior. So it's like a group of people. How are they interacting? What is the dynamic? 100,000 is like market behavior. So it's like a community, a neighborhood. I want to focus on the face. Like, what is the 100-foot view? And then next, focus on like the 1,000 and 10,000-foot view. And then I think per the scope of work, the market behavior is coming next.
Yep.
So we're going to focus on like kind of immediate stuff and then just continue to like waterfall our decision making.
That's right. I would also add, and that all of that checks out, I would add that there's an inverse relationship as you zoom further and further out. There's an inverse relationship between focus on the dot itself versus the context it's in. So when you're 100-foot, you don't care about context, right? Who cares, right? It's only about that dot. What is it doing, etc. Or what's it feeling? What's its personality? You're only focused on that dot. And then 1,000-foot, you get a little bit of context, like what is it doing in this specific area? All the way up to 100,000-foot, where it's like the dot is so small that it's essentially, disappeared, and you're so focused on the larger context, right? So it's like the inverse relationship, and I think it's correct to focus, 100-foot and 1,000-foot first, before zooming further and further out.
Yeah, I honestly kept going back and forth myself. I was like, should we start from 100,000 foot or 100? Because it's like, it's weird where it's like, those are the 2 like foundations almost. And then everything kind of builds on top. And I was like, I don't know what a metaphor for this is, but.
Well, in consumer, when you're building a consumer product, there are a couple of exceptions, right? Yeah, social networks being one, but in consumer products, you should always focus on the single player mode first, which is the 100-foot, 1,000-foot view, right? Like in the event, and obviously for anybody watching this, I don't see this happening, blah, 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 blah. So in the event that native doesn't work at the aggregate, you should still be left with a dot that you own that can do stuff on its own, even if it's not in this like larger context.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It can go trade for you. It can manage a wallet. It can, whatever. And you don't need like the native context for those things to be true. And you still would need the 100-foot and 1,000-foot view, to make that thing useful. Right. So what you're essentially saying is like, should we focus on the network effects first, or should we focus on the single player mode first? And I think unequivocally, like the answer is yes. You should focus on single player mode first, and then zoom out. As you get the single player mode right, it's like, hey, I want to do this in multiplayer mode. Like Mario Kart's a really good example, or Animal Crossing, or whatever, where it's like I can have fun playing Mario Kart by myself. It gets even more fun when you start to add the internet in, and I can like race other people and explore this world and all those other things, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Also, not for nothing, native that is like a clanker for agents is kind of amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, don't spoil too much.
I'm just saying, in a world where you have to pivot, as you were saying that, I was like, I don't hate that, TBH.
Me either.
Cool. Well, that was a lot of upfront for me to show you some dots, but let's get into it. And I want to say, I don't need you to love every single idea because I wanted to show you a lot.
Okay.
So I'm going to walk through all of them. And then at the end, I put them all on a page and we can kind of like zoom around back and forth. But I did want to go from like the simplest to some things that I'm like, I'm excited. I don't know if you'll like it, but we'll see.
They're pretty deep end. They're like those ideas that grow after a couple days of sitting on it. So
Yeah, for sure.
So the first thing that I think is the most obvious answer is like these imperfect hand-drawn edges, and analog textures. So even like the idea that these edges could be like kind of hand-drawn, like the same way you do your signature, and it's a little janky and there's these little imperfections, like maybe you draw your dot and it has these sort of birthmarks that are like your wobbly, shaky hand. I personally love the idea of also giving everything a little bit of a grainy texture that we can even like post-rationalize as it's like a halftone pattern. So everything at its smallest scale, instead of being made up of pixels, is like technically made up of dots. And it just gives it a little bit more of an analog, like paper feel that again has that like bespoke, more artisan quality to it. And then you would use color like competitor, achiever, friend to kind of like differentiate between the dots.
Yeah. What do you mean by analog texture?
I think when you do this kind of like halftone texture, it just innately looks like it's printed. It has more of a like physical provenance to it that doesn't feel so slick and computer generated.
Yeah. No, that checks out. I hadn't heard that term before. And it's very funny that this is the kind of direction that you're heading day zero. If there's time, I'll explain why, but this is very cool. Yeah.
And this can also kind of be expanded and like remixed into some of these other ideas, by the way.
Yeah.
So one way to kind of plus it up is to think about like, do we add generative color systems that have these like liquid mesh gradients? So at its most like kind of simplest, it would have these sort of 4 bounce quadrants of the different colors. And I'm using I think it's the Bartleby colors, the Achiever. Yeah, I'm using those colors for now. Yeah, there's a whole separate discussion of like the hierarchy of colors that we need to have. But for the sake of like argument and showing things consistently, I just use those 4. So like a balanced dot would be like pretty uniform. Something that's skewed more towards Achiever would have more blue, whereas Explorer would have more orange. But overall, we'd want it to have this sort of like lightly kind of liquid mesh effect. And even if animation is a possibility, which I know is putting a lot on you as like the sole builder to bring this all to life, there's just a world of like beautiful references that makes this feel really elegant.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll tell you if something's not doable or scalable or buildable or whatever. I think my question with this approach is, imagine like let's pick a small number, 12 dots in an area. Like, how recognizable is my dot versus another if they're all mesh, like liquid mesh gradients with the same colors? Like, how recognizable, if I see like 3 Explorer dots together, how distinct could one Explorer dot be from another? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's an argument to be made about like, does this help you recognize your dot in a crowd? And it's like, we could fine tune the parameters of like, yes, we try to make the gradient mesh, Gresh, like applied in a way that's like more of a thumbprint. And even one of the directions a little further down has something closer to that. It feels a little bit more unique, but I totally understand how it's like kind of a macro view, like not all the way zoomed out, but like a group of 3 could be a little harder to be like, that one is mine.
I'd also say I don't know if the liquid gradient fits with the like imperfection analog piece as much. And I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you agree, and that's why it's a question mark here, not a check mark. I don't know if that, like, no pun intended, meshes with the like imperfection, hand drawn / kind of paper feel. Maybe it does, and maybe we could figure out something. Maybe halftones has something to do with that. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but
Yeah, all good. I mean, it's definitely a more digital texture, but what I loved about this reference is it starts to feel more like a light leak, which is kind of like one of those happy accidents in photography, which again, like more of an analog, like IRL kind of heritage that we're just sort of replicating digitally. So even giving it the argument of like, it's like the procedural birthmark that's generated that you get with your dot that you kind of can't control, but you might sort of like learn to love and ultimately recognize. Like, I think there's something there that could really make sense. And totally to your point, like, I think imperfect hand-drawn edges, like, we're all feeling good. Analog textures, we're all feeling good. And then, yeah, it's up for debate if we want to like push it further in this direction. And then that third one is like variable for the next couple of slides.
okay.
So the next one is having this sort of like aura, chakra, personality orbit approach. The idea that it's almost like a tree ring, like the more your dot kind of like is developing and is like learning and growing its personality and evolving, it kind of gets like a ring that sort of like continuously is adding and like appearing throughout. So its appearance is fundamentally always changing. I keep calling these in my head like electron orbital clouds. Like they're literally just like energy, like signatures around your dot that sort of shows its like status or its most up-to-date personality, since these things are dynamic and they're always changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I especially love this like animation reference, which I think once we get into motion and like the status indicator and its behavior and interpersonal like dynamics, this could be like a really fun territory to like lock in and explore further.
Yeah. I like this. I'm not in love. I like it more than the liquid mesh idea. I like referring to it as orbitals versus chakra or aura for spiritual reasons. But I could also see where this would scale with like when you have a dot that's like been super active or, you know, a robust portfolio or whatever. There's also some information, transmitted just by looking at the dot. It's not just the aesthetic. Like I could generate orbitals based off Bartle and portfolio activity. And so at a glance, I could say, oh, that's a KOL dot or an influencer dot or whatever, right? Just based off the visuals, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like as far as signaling goes, like zooming out on this one, I was like, I'm not sure how it'll work, but like I can see this one zooming out a little bit further and making sense like at some of those latter steps more immediately.
Yeah. The downside is I think I prefer the purely aesthetic, not even like with native in mind or anything like that, just pure aesthetics. The concentric rings, I'm not in love with, but I love the meaning and the concept. You know what I mean? Does that
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. This is the wild card one. So this is the idea of marbling. So this is like my thumbprint idea. So again, it would have to be generative. I don't know if it would be dynamic, but you basically just get this really cool pattern that is like, you know, potentially pulled again from those characteristics. So it could be like color weighted for something that's an adventurer versus explorer or any of the other ones. And it really is like no two will be identical. This is just a reference showing like another way we could do it that's a little bit more textural versus like this marbling thing that I'm doing. But also like I think there's a strong like argument to be made for how this would work motion, and just I think holistically. Don't know how this one will scale, but I was like, it's really cool. I kept debating if I should show you or not, and I was like, we'll see what he says.
So here's what I say. This one's my favorite out of the three. I can imagine. I think I like the fingerprint, thumbprint, unique thing. I think some white space overlaid can make it super recognizable and still carry, like, imagine combining the orbitals piece with the marbling. I think that could get interesting and communicate some information while being visually distinct. Like a hand-drawn marble, like a paper marble, I think is very interesting aesthetically. And if we do it well, I think would also carry information in a way that orbitals like really, really does well. So yes, I like this one. I'm glad you kept it in.
Dan also convinced me to keep it in.
Good job, Dan.
It's just so cool. I mean,
It's cool.
it's so rad. And like when we were talking about like the ways to like draw the outer edge of your dot, right? Like maybe there's like a circle that you have to go in on your phone and just trace to make, the outside of your dot. We also talked about like, what if there's like a 10-second voice recording that you have to like breathe life into your dot, and like kind of give it
now we're talking.
voice, like a voice transcription where it's going to read from that data and then create some sort of unique marbling effect inside the dot.
That's I like that a lot, like a lot. But hey, I mean, Judeo-Christian background, like when I'm thinking about dots arising, like I also think a lot about humans arising, and that's where the cards arise. Like we're all dealt a hand in life, etc. We also have like the breath of life in us. Like I think that's an interesting concept. I like it's also a product like truism the meeting before this, I was talking with the Rolodex founder and, was talking about like people putting investment into a product, like increases the attachment to that product. Like if you're going through answering personality quizzes about your dot and you're drawing the circle and you're breathing into your dot, like that attachment is like really cool. And I think in the same way it just did me, like that, the smile and joy was genuine on my part just now. And like, I think people would experience that for themselves. Like, you're asking me to breathe into my phone? Like, yes, I am. Like, you're creating a digital being. You're welcome.
Right. This is your dot's first words it hears as it's like being birthed. Yep.
Yeah, there is just so much here. Like the more we were ripping on it, that we were like, it just feels really cool, and it feels like really artful too. Like it feels like I would be proud to show this to someone and be like, look at my dot, because it just looks nice. It feels elevated.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's cool. And it would be really easy, honestly, from a implementation perspective, like to store soundprint data on chain. Like I could knock that out in half a day. Like today, I could have it where you breathe into your dot and record that as JSON data, and then record that JSON data on the NFT, like as your breath print or whatever, and then the image, like I already do that with signatures. Like that's
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Cool. Well, wild card. Always important to have one.
Wild cards are great. They make shitty hands fantastic.
Oh, for sure. And then the last idea is
Oh, that's fun.
Potentially having little designs in each dot. And again, this is at like the face level. So as you zoom out with the designs, it would have to be like simple or kind of just fade into pure color. By the way, like this is the same animator as this. It's just this like super talented, I think she's Spanish.
Okay.
Does like motion design, but she like prints it out with like a Rizzo machine and like does these analog GIFs.
Oh, that's cool.
So these are just like looping GIFs of like these designs that kind of perfectly like create this motion that feels like, yeah, it just infinitely loops. It's interesting, it's sophisticated, it's simple, it's clean, and it's abstract. So again, just giving like kind of a world of like symbols that corresponds to the personality, it corresponds with like the dot creation process to make sure your little guy has like a unique signifier that you can trace. How we would like make this so that no two dots are the same, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I wanted to like serve it up for discussion.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting question. I think this, more so than the marbling, improves the like quick recognition. Like if I'm looking at a phone screen and I see 10 dots and one of them has the, I don't know, the Simon Says pattern, number 2 on the top row. Like that's super easily recognizable by me as my dot. You know what I mean? I think it also aesthetically fits the paper drawn aesthetic a bit more than the marbling. But it is more limiting. I wonder if there's not like, that also dovetails with my feedback about white space. I wonder if we could like use a geometric overlay pattern of white space similar to these on top of a marble, like an exclusionary pattern or something like that, where it's a marble background with an overlay of a geometric pattern for recognizability. I wonder if there's something there.
Yeah, like cropping the marbling into some of these shapes, you mean, so that you get like the shape that the texture is like the marble. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. And for what it's worth, this is everything on one, so we can just kind of look and shoot everything here.
Yeah, I wanted, at risk of it being diluted, I want to take a little bit from most of these and combine in an interesting way. I don't like the mesh gradients as much, especially in contrast to the others. I think an imperfect outline is a no-brainer, and then it's just like, what is in the middle? I think it's I like the information conveyance of the orbitals, but nothing else. Like I don't like the aesthetics. It's, I like the use of halftones, but that's like plug and play kind of everywhere. I like the more expressive pieces, both the marbling and the patterns. I wonder if there's not a way to combine them in a really interesting way. I think the downside of the marbling is I think you would lose, like imagine, the first wave, the first cohort of dots is limited to 10,000, right? There's only so many ways that you could marble something and it be visually distinct. Like they will be distinct, but not without scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd have to really look, etc. I think patterns help with that. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to use patterns in conjunction with marbling to both communicate the information well, I won't speak for you guys, but that I like from the orbitals, but in a way that is aesthetically pleasing without sacrificing the unique recognition.
Yeah.
That's asking a lot,
No,
but we're close already.
I think that makes sense. And that's kind of the point of like this check-in, is to be like, here's kind of the gamut. What do we like, so we can refine and keep moving forward? So this is like perfect feedback.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about the long list of generative artists that I know that like maybe could help, construct this system, because they're so used to working with variance and uniqueness in a large set of possible generations.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I also really liked the more expressive end of the spectrum too. So I'm really happy that that's where we're like.
Same. Mesh gradients. So imperfect outlines, we almost didn't show. And then I was like, nope, we have to show that, because that's like the whole problem we got into with the last logo, like when we were doing the native logo. And then mesh gradients kind of needs to be shown for process, but feels a little bit pedestrian. But then you can see the leap that's made to everything else. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's like my natural process is like, get the easy stuff out of the way and then just like continue to iterate until you like get somewhere cool.
Yeah, I like the imperfect outlines. I think it's going to add a lot, and it's super easy to implement. But imperfect outlines on its own is not enough. You know what I mean? It's just the border essentially. It doesn't answer the bigger question.
Yeah, agree. Cool. Well, on to the next, which is color. So again, easiest, most obvious answer first. I'm curious to see if you can guess what I think is the correct answer.
Or when to apply color, or why apply color, or
just of the options I think we have for color.
you've shown your hand of Bartle characteristics.
I'm kind of using it like just to show you like consistency, but I wouldn't say this is like my strict reco for color. I think that there's a couple of different ways I could see this working.
Okay.
So the first is short-term signal. So this is like activity states that are changing based on your dot's behavior. And this could even be like more evident with pulsing, dimming, brightening, or other kind of visual cues that relate to color. So this is how your dot would say like, I'm trading, I'm celebrating, I need attention, without having to change its core identity. But I think that this starts to get a little confusing if it's like a short-term status thing, because it starts.
I've seen this. I think you prefer color as an indicator of core identity.
Yes, which is the next one. But there's a third option.
Okay. Interesting.
Long-term signal, right? Like it has a starting state and it has an evolved state, and color is an indicator of things like personality, even like influence or status or reputation that it's accumulating throughout the native world. Something to consider that I realized as I was digging through all this is that color can also be an identity signal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like the color you choose for your dot when you create it is like tied personally to the colors that you like. And I was thinking it could be one of the unique identifiers that lets you say like, that's my dot, like 100 or 100,000 foot view. And I was just thinking about base colors a lot. Like,
yeah,
object is so popular because people just have really specific color affinities. Like color is just such an emotional signifier. And even myself, I was like, obviously Jordan is green, would need a green dot, regardless if it's an explorer or not. So I think there's an argument to be made for like, is it pre-configured by our framework, or is it a choice that we allow people to have?
That's an interesting question. And there's also a subtext question. If choice is an exclusionary choice, So for instance, if I mint a base color, no one else can mint it.
Mm-hmm.
That would cap the population of native. Not necessarily bad. There's what? 16 colors in hex. 6 values, 16. It's like 16 million.
But does it have to be exclusionary? Because even like name.
Well, first question, right? Like it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Like to answer your question, no, it doesn't have to be. But if it were, it'd be 16. Yeah, 60 to the 6, which is like 15, 16 million.
Yeah, he used to have it on the site, I think, the number that the total out of what was minted.
Yes. So it would cap.
$16,777,216.
So almost 17 million. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, that's a ton, right? That's double the size of New York. So it's like practically infinite. But then you'd have people with like FFFFFFFFFE, right? Like, it would let you spot your dot among thousands, assuming that people will be diverse in their colors, right? Not assuming like people will tend for white, black, blue, native green, right? And then you get some, like that's probably, I don't know, 60% of all dots will be some share of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So to get to like, back to the cascading decisions, I agree with you. Color should not be used for short-term signal.
Mm.
Those things are better done as motion or vibrance or something along those lines. I think like maybe color has some kind of weight there, but not as the primary thing. I do think of color more as long-term or identity signal for sure.
This is like not an easy question, by the way.
It is not. It's a like arguably a harder question than like the first one of how to make a circular character, honestly.
That's why I say not what color, but why color.
Yeah. Well, if it's pure, and I like the spectrum of ephemeral to permanent here, that seems like the right decision. If it's fully permanent, you set it once and you can't change it, nor does it evolve. I think that locks us in almost too much, maybe. I don't have a clear answer here, which is a rarity.
It's a tough one. Like, even just sitting on it for a few days, I was like, we're going to have to see if Derek can somehow figure this one out on the call or in the couple of days after it, because it's subjective at this point.
It is.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking through, just to think out loud and give you kind of an insight into how I would think about this. Like,
Go for it.
so on one hand, there's like the philosophy of native, which is what is native's use of color. On the other hand, there's the implementation. If it evolves as long-term signal, then there's some performance hit there. Like I'm having to query the chain, query activity, to real-time render, even if it updates every 24 hours or whatever, like at some point I'd have to query and assemble the color of the dot. Versus you set it at creation, it gets stored on the NFT that represents the dot, and it just renders, and that's it. One-time query, right? It also dovetails with the first question. Like, okay, I set it to native green or whatever is my color. How does that interact with marbling? How does that interact with patterns? How does that interact with, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we would definitely have to come back to you with an answer on that. Like, the best feedback you can probably give for this round is to be like, thumbs up on this, keep going. Thumbs up on this, keep going. And here's where I'm leaning, but what I need to make a decision here.
Yep. So thumbs down on short-term signal, thumbs up on the midpoint of this spectrum towards permanent. There's something long-term or identity that makes sense for dots in my mind. Keep going. Let's see options there. I think that's an easy decision for me to make. I think the second order decision is where it gets difficult.
Yeah. And you don't have to make that quite yet. Like, I think we still owe you more to like fully make that argument, but it helps to just be like, where are we feeling, so that we can like help narrow that down and like collectively feel confident in the choice.
Yep.
And like more information, like how you were talking about the queries and like the back end kind of dev implications, like if more of that comes up that you want to share with us, like that's always super helpful.
Yeah.
Anything that would impact like the choices we show to you back to like help narrow this down, like feel free to just brain dump, because that's all super helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Shortest section, but hardest section. Done.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump in real quick. I'm going to feed the dogs because they're begging. So I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
Do you want me to wait, Dan? No? Keep going? All right, cool. This one is a little more fun and a little more a la carte.
Yep.
You can definitely like mix and match some of these. And this is kind of the question you've been asking like throughout. And it's weird because it kind of impacts everything, and keeping it separate was also strange. But so this one, hand drawing your dot, choosing its own color, which we've already covered. And I just wanted to make sure it had its own place, like kind of all together. I think it's interesting to consider tone of voice and the way the agent speaks to you, because, for example, like my Claude swears like a sailor because I swear like a sailor when I talk to it. And it started to like pick that up, and it's like really charming when I see my like specific mannerisms reflected back to me.
Yeah.
So does it like learn from your speech patterns, like by pulling from your forecaster data? And does it kind of use that in its own speech pattern? So like I was just cribbing on Dan's profile and thinking like what his dot might say based on his posts.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm super curious about is like names. So
Yep.
like you name your dot.
Yep. You name, as of right now, this exists today. When you mint a dot, you name it. There's a magic wand button that you can hit, and it'll suggest names for you across a variety of categories. But you can override those with your own custom name.
That's basically what I was going to recommend, like something that doesn't give you a blank page and like pulls from what you've already configured. So you can kind of be like, that's a funny name. Like I love going to adoption shelters and just seeing like the names for some of the dogs. So just knowing that like off the bat, you can name your dot and that's not going to be like a blocker is excellent.
No, yeah, that happens today. The other thing, I could do a better job contextualizing it. Like maybe one of the names is pulled from your last 10 casts, right? Or like I take your last 10 casts, put it into a model, and it spits out a name suggestion or something. Like right now, it's just like, give me two normal human names, a name that makes sense based on what I've told you so far about this dot, and then two like futuristic names, right? So they'll give you like Ralph, Jane, something related to your token that you want to launch with your dot, and then like pyramid and spiral. It's fine for V1. It's not where I want to end up being. At the same time, I don't want your dot fully contextualized.
Yeah, not you.
Exactly. It is not me. It is its own thing. But it should be someone I get along with.
Yeah.
Right.
Something funny, like there's a shelter we volunteer with, and they just like name their dogs based on pop culture. It's like relevant when they get them, like when they intake the dogs. So like potentially adding that to just be like, what movies or shows are like relevant right now that people might like, you don't have to pull it from their
Yeah.
file because they'll self-select if they're just like, oh my God, I'm watching Love Island and this person's name. Like that's kind of how baby names are anyways. Like,
Yeah.
just in the zeitgeist at the moment, you get like a ton of
Yeah, but then you end up with a 45-year-old named Kelsey because they were named after Travis. Like
I was gonna say Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah, hey, my name's Kylo Ren. But like I think as one of a plethora of options and like giving people the choice, I think that's totally fine, right? Like it shouldn't be the only option. There's really easy ways to do that, right? So there's like I could pull trending casts, for instance. Like what are the trending topics right now? And it's like, oh yeah, meet my dot, Tyson Fury, or Yeezy, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah. Um, and then the last one is sort of like a workaround for faces. So I think there's a lot of research about how like eyes are super expressive and communicative. And like my favorite one is the last one about how like wolves don't have eyebrows that they can manipulate, but dogs do because that is how they communicate with us. And like puppy dog eyes is like an evolutionary like feature. And so just thinking like if we had to put a face, like what the absolute max I recommend is like maybe eyes could be interesting. And again, only at that like 100-foot view where you're like zoomed in, your dot is the only one you're seeing, and you're trying to be like, how's this guy doing? Like, what's up?
Oh, so you would only see the eyes if zoomed in?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you'd see a bunch of them like zoomed out. I think it's just like when you're interfacing with your dot one-on-one. And then again, just kind of thinking of like Duolingo and how they redesigned their owls specifically to keep you engaged in the app. And like, I put it at the top, this article about like why they redesigned it. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I just really like how it was all about like a character that like draws you into the world. And like we were talking at the beginning, like just making sure Mario has like a draw to him that makes you say like, I want to check in. I want to see how he's doing.
Yep.
And I believe that is it. That's all she wrote.
Very cool. I don't know how I feel about eyes.
They got to be the right eyes.
They have to be the right eyes for sure. That's not a negative statement. It is a literal, I do not know how I feel about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm too scared to tell you no. Like, that's not it. Because I see the value in them for sure. And people, I think, are going to anthropomorphize their dot anyway, just naturally. I like the idea of if it's 100 foot that they show and outside of that they don't. That's interesting to me. Yeah, I'll have to think about this one.
I think we might have to mood board some eyes. And I know that, Derek, you've mentioned, I don't know if it was last time or the time before, but you were like, there's some character that you saw recently that you were like, I actually like the face on that one. And you mentioned it. I don't know if you ever found it, but like, it would be nice to see what sort of eyes you're like, that's a good representation.
What was that one? I remember saying that. Now that you mentioned that, I don't remember what it was. I'll have to think about it. But yes, this is an area where some additional work could help us, I think, make a decision on go, no go.
But it's like, this is like a stretch goal. Like, we don't necessarily need it. You know, it can be
For sure.
later.
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. To me, after this conversation, I think the two biggest questions, eyes being maybe a third or fourth, the two biggest questions are, what's the right intersection of visuals and aesthetic that creates a character from a circle? I think we're close to that. We have the prime ingredients. Now it's just a matter of like mixing them in a way that makes sense. And then number two is the color question.
Mhm.
Maybe that one's number one or whatever, but it's like, what's the right intersection that makes a circle a character? And then what is the use of color in native? I think those are the two primary questions that I have after this conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I feel really good right now because I think we're close enough where it's like, okay, Jordan and Dan like understand what needs to be done right now. And I think we're close already.
We also we're kind of swinging with two bats because a lot of what we liked was like motion, which I think is going to make our ability to answer some of these questions easier too. So yeah, I also feel like I'm super clear on the things that you're like really vibing with, and we have a blessing to go forward on a couple of these rabbit holes. I feel super confident about figuring out the right combination for the first question of like the marbling and like the patterns and just the ways at which we can make that work. I also think a little bit about color.
So let me present a couple of things. This is just like random stuff that I'm working on. Let's start here. This is probably the most. So I've started like demoing some stuff and like figuring out like, what does it look like when you like, this is also mobile, so I can like play with it on my phone. And like, what does it feel like to like move this thing around or like whatever? And you can tell most of it is like motion of some kind, whether that's the wobble, hand draw, and I'm going to add green and like informality to the border. I don't like something like that's like a little bit more grainy. Maybe I start with like your hand drawn circle as a seed and then devolves from there. And then it's like, what's in the middle, right? Right. And this would be like the marble or the intersection of patterns or whatever goes there. But I started to scaffold this out to show us, like, okay, what are some of these different ideas? Kind of what would it look like? So this is helpful. I'm going to implement some of the stuff that we talked about here so we can actually see what this looks like. And maybe I can throw it up somewhere so you guys can see it even ahead of the next call as well. And then this has nothing to do with what we've talked about, but I've said that the
Oh,
so
you're
that-
able to talk?
yeah. So those are could you hear that?
No.
But that's easy though.
It's probably good that you couldn't. Recorded samples, animal lease. I basically replicated the way that Animal Crossing animals talk. Yeah, it's like pretty spot on. Computer synthesis is like very digital, like too much for me. Recording samples, I literally on a weekend I recorded every consonant and vowel sound like into Audacity and then spliced it up, and then I can like control with these controls here and like how each individual sample is played, and then it puts it together into like, hey Jordan and Dan, this is synthesized speech. It's ridiculous. Like hilariously ridiculous. Not in like ridiculous good way. It's actually ridiculous. But then the interesting thing is starting to blend some of that. And this is sound, right? It doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but I better show that for other people, or other people start to get some ideas. But I'll try to get that into, especially the visuals piece. I'll try to like extract that into something that I could like throw up at a URL and send you guys so you could play with it yourselves as well. Taking in some of these ideas so you can actually like see it on your phone, and like maybe that will have some implication. But
Yeah. No, I love it. And if you want, like, I've been doing all my little dot like mock-ups in Photoshop because I was like, all
Sure.
the space sliders feel like they would be more or less doable in code. So if you want any of the recipes, like pixel recipe wise, to play with too, like feel free to just chat me.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can proactively send those over if you want, and then I could figure out a way to put it in. Just the ones that we know, like we don't need to include the liquid mesh stuff, just the ones that we know could have some intersection, and I can start to play with that intersection in code as well.
Yeah, like totally.
And send that over.
For sure. I'm curious, like, I want to host us here real quick because I know this is going to be like a tricky decision to work through. I'm curious to just like have a bit of a brain dump here about like what we may or may not want to consider to feel like we can make a choice here. Like, is there any lingering questions you guys have that we didn't cover already, or that have kind of since emerged?
I think if it's permanent identity, that's a decision of no return. That's a decision that can't easily be undone later, like, because people are minting these on chain, they're attached to it, etc., versus something that's like long-term signal. If it's identity and fully permanent, basically the decision matches whatever we choose.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like, hey, the color is permanent and it's identity and you can't change it, then that decision is also permanent, right? If the decision is, hey, color is long-term signal, we're going to go down this route and your dot evolves over time, that decision can also evolve over time. Like I can change the way that it evolves. I can change the way the color impacts. I can change the meaning of the color, etc. And so, the decision and the substance of the decision are actually linked.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the inputs into that decision are implementation and performance. Like basically, if it's long-term signal, even if it's the right decision, it's going to require me to like build a more robust indexer. Which is, code should never drive product decisions. It's the other way around, but it is an input. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think my problem here is that I don't have an instinctual leaning
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I do, and that tends to be like the right thing for native. I don't have, like, my gut is telling me it's identity. My gut is telling me it's long-term signal. Like, I don't have that right now, and I think that's the biggest problem for me. It's an unfamiliar territory for me from a decision-making perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very important question that I don't have an instinct on. And so I don't even know how to like get to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. It's on me. Like it's my decision. It's my decision I have to make.
Well, we want to help you make it too, because it's
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And in my head, it's like, yeah, it's like 17 million colors, right?
Yeah.
But is there, it's just, I keep coming back to like, is there a way to extend that? There isn't really. But like,
No, there is. Alpha channels.
I guess, yeah.
Like in like FF0000 with 80% alpha is very different than the same color with a 20%.
That's true.
But even then, like you're still rendering it on screen, and that renders as a particular color.
Yeah. There's just, in my head, I'm like, is anything after that like duplicates? They just become like second, because then it's like you're a second class citizen at that point.
Yep. I mean, with alpha, it goes from what, 16, 17 million to a few billion?
Yeah.
16 to the 8th at that point. So it's like, we're starting to reach the max of math that I can do in my head, but it's like 4 billion?
Mm-hmm.
What's 16 to the 8th?
That would be the same, man.
Yeah. I am not a math guy. Let me see here. We got 1, 2. Yeah, it's 4.2 billion. 4.3 billion, basically. It's
4.3?
4,294,000,000. Yeah. So closer to 4.3.
I mean, that's quite more. It's like enough, that's quite a bit more than 16 million. I think 16 million is probably enough anyway. Like, I don't think the cap is.
Well, and then once you cap, then it's like secondary market for dots at that point only. Right? That could be like bought and sold, just like meme accounts or whatever are turned into like other accounts, or people will like, gain 40,000 followers and then sell the account. I'm not saying that that's the thing that we want to go for, but like,
realistically speaking, like the cap is not a reason to not do identity.
Okay.
To be honest, like I have plans for scalability far before 16 million citizens in native. Like I've said it publicly a couple of times, but like native is the first city, not the only.
Mm.
Right.
Like there will be other cities besides the city of native. assuming this goes well.
So native
And so
has
you can just like reset, like, oh, I own white in the city of native, or red or blue or green or black. I'm not trying to get canceled for picking the white color. I own this color in the city of native. I own this different color in the city of Murphy or whatever. Right.
Mhm.
right. Or the next one gets alpha to it too, and it's like
Yeah.
max occupancy for native, the city is like 17 million.
Yeah. It's much lower than that, but yeah. Yeah, I'm not too worried about the cap, but I do think it's worth noting that there would be a cap. My biggest hesitation for identity is that it's not easily reversible, both as a decision and as what you create as a user, as a player.
I mean, it kind of sounds like similar to like the marbling with the patterns. What we want is something that lives like kind of here. Like we want some input here that can reflect like what people like. We want maybe them to have like a color they can choose, but then for it to also represent something within the city of native. So kind of like doing this, but then giving it like a bit of native like scaffolding around it.
Yeah, if it's like a core color,
Yeah.
like at point of create, and maybe that's not exclusive, right? Like you could have two people that choose a core color of orange or whatever,
Yeah.
and the marbling like uses that base color along with maybe the Bartle personality, along with portfolio activity or whatever, or maybe it like creates a marbling based on activity and Bartle, and then overlays your base color as like a layer on top of it. But then I have to think about performance. Like once you have 50 of these things on screen simultaneously, each with at least 2 layers that is querying the chain at least one time each. I have to think about those kinds of things. It's not blocking. It's just like literally how would I do that? That's your intuition is right though, Jordan. Like all that to say, your intuition is right. I think that is the right place on the spectrum where it's like close to permanent, but not fully, maybe not exclusive, but that permanent choice, because again, it increases the user's attachment to the dot, but that choice impacts long-term signal of some kind, right?
I was even just thinking like, I mean, this kind of goes complete opposite of what I just said, but like with all of these examples, like ways, like you can always change what your little mood like profile character is. I mean,
Yeah.
like Duolingo, like you can change their hair, their face, their clothing. Like the appearance is actually like it's an identity decision, but it is ephemeral. And I think I put this on the permanent end of the spectrum because I was thinking about base colors, but like potentially it doesn't have to be. Like the thing that could be baked is like really more whatever this sort of like long-term signal, like status, reputation system is. And then the color could just be like, one day you're feeling green, one day you're feeling blue, one day you're feeling purple. And it's just like, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Like you can just have a color picker.
Yeah, I like that. That feels right to me, where it's the color isn't exclusive. You could have two people that choose the same core color. But also it's like fairly permanent in the sense of it's a long-term decision. Like I don't suspect most people would change core color daily or even weekly.
Yeah. So maybe that's something that you unlock, like your ability to change your dot's color comes with like, it has to be this old or it has to be this static. Like it could be just another thing that like makes the world logic like makes sense.
Yep. And I know I started the conversation with talking about single player mode, but I wonder if there's something with collaborative color that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like if my dot is with your dot, maybe your core color can be unlocked for my dot as well. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that starts to get really interesting too, which is why I wanted us to like hang here a little longer.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it's a really interesting question that I don't have an immediate answer to. The good news is, we can eliminate some things, right? The short-term signal thing, etc. Yeah, maybe your core color is exclusive at point of dot creation, and then you can unlock other colors as you interact in the game. That's interesting, right? Where like I want my dot to be native green, but Derek created the native dot, and I have to interact with him if I want my dot to ever have native green as a core color.
I feel like that is such a cool way to encourage like people to interact with each other in native, to be like, I want to be this purple. I have to go be friends with the purple
Yeah,
people.
you have to find the purple. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be someone out there that's chasing to unlock every one of the million colors, like trade with every dot.
Yeah. Yeah. Legit.
To unlock the whole map.
It's also interesting, which by the way, is something we haven't talked about is pretty unique to humans in native right now is prints. Like maybe there's something there as well, but like reserving colors for people. So like someone from the Coinbase team can unlock base blue, for instance. Only employees at Farcaster get that specific purple, etc. And you have to go interact with them.
I mean, I think that's a great model for securing partnerships before launch too. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to get in on native and get your brand color before someone else scoops it up, and make people have to like interact with you so that they can also like be part of this tribe. Because that's kind of like the reason I thought of this is like I'm quite sure I have like a touch of synesthesia, and like ideas just bounce off to me as colors, and it's like a wayfinding like mechanism for me. And I find that like a lot of people kind of intuitively do that, even if it's more obvious, like artists and creatives. But I do think that color is like a wayfinding and a social catalyst, and a like reason to kind of stay and participate in the economy feels like really strong.
Yeah, I agree with that. My former co-founder is synesthetic. I'm going to run some of this by him too. See if he's got an idea on.
I'd be super curious to hear it. Also, I was going to say, like, the more people you can kind of get to weigh in on the color question, I think the better.
Yeah, for sure. I'll probably share this with the community and get some inputs there.
I'm rereading that book, and I'm totally blanking on the title, but it's this woman who did like fashion editorial stuff for years, and she just wrote like an index of colors, and she like deep dives into like the history and the cultural connotation of like colors throughout like time. And it's so fast. Like color is just, it is just one of those things that everyone has an opinion, and it's such a great aperture to get people to be like, I'm emotionally invested in this because it's green or it is purple or whatever.
It's very fascinating because we're not even sure that we all see color the same way. You know what I mean? Like that's what's so crazy about it.
Oh, totally.
I'm fairly certain that we do within a margin of error, but we don't know.
I think it's like drawing. right? Like if you practice drawing every day, you get good at it. And if you stop practicing, like your hand loses that dexterity, or sport even, right? Like if you're playing basketball every day, you're good. And if you forget, like you don't. I think it's like the more you practice, like recognizing different colors, like broader of a spectrum that you can see.
Yep.
The less you do, like the more you'll just kind of make like big generalizations.
Yeah. My family and I had a color argument the other day. I was wearing like a Carhartt brown shirt, you know, and my daughters were like, "Why are you wearing a yellow shirt?" And I'm like, "The shirt isn't yellow. What are you talking about?" In their defense, in the sunlight, it could take on like a Dijon kind of color, but
I was gonna say, were you in a room, and what time of day was it?
yeah, it was golden hour and yes, that type of thing. But I'm like, no, I also have like a very good vision, and my daughters do not. They all have prescription glasses. And I'm like, why are you arguing with me? Like, I can't hear, you can't see. Like, why are we talking about why are you arguing with me about color? It was fun. And then we ended up like taking a picture of it. Like my middle daughter, she's super creative, etc. I mean, all of my daughters are creative, but my middle daughter is like very artistic, visually creative in the traditional sense. She took a picture of my shirt and like blended it all together. It was like, what color is this? I said that the Claude's like, that's the brown shirt.
You guys
Claude's wrong. And I'm like, you're right. Listen to the Chat GPT. Chat GPT was like, that's a brown shirt.
No.
It was the dress all over again.
I was gonna say, yeah, it sounds like a mini version of the dress.
Yeah, it was. But Carhartt obviously lists it as Carhartt brown. But it's the same kind of thing where, is my blue? Is this brown? Etc.
Yeah, apparently what I've been calling red for my entire life, my husband sees as orange. And I'm like, before I was Jordan is green, I was Jordan loves red. And I'm like, now I'm gonna have to be Jordan something orange. This is crazy.
Yeah. Oh, this one's hard. I'm doing the is my blue. This one could go either way.
So it does end at a certain point. I remember doing this with the co-founders, and me and Sage were closer than me and Austin. Because everyone ends at a different value, and it's interesting to see how far you are apart.
But if you just do a blue for all of them.
So for me, bluer, I am bluer than 80% of the population. For me, turquoise is green. That's what it says. I just went through it quickly though, so I'll
I'm greener than 94% of the population.
I mean that checks out.
Yeah, sounds about right.
That checked out.
Well, are there any other sections or pages you wanted to linger on for a bit longer? I feel pretty good about the feedback, and I know you're gonna like sit and chew on it for a few days.
I am. I feel good about it. I think I'm going to tackle some of the demo stuff and send that over. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to ask some folks about specifically color. I have a pretty good instinct and opinion on the first question. The color question, I think, is blurrier for me. And then out of those two things, I think we'll be able to figure out their non-facial recognition stuff. And then from you guys, I think further work in those first two questions, and then a mood board of eyes of some kind. I'll try to figure out what that character was. I'll try to remember. And we can go from there.
Sounds good, man.
Cool.
Yeah, feels good to be back in the swing.
Agreed. Yeah. Coming in the fall too. App Store summer or App Store autumn.
I'm Storautumn.
Yeah.
We missed the summer. Wait till next year.
Yeah, don't get me started. Streamer summer. Well, there was a few summers this year.
I feel like on-chain summer is dead.
Yeah, on-chain summer, clanker summer, streamer summer,
The original hot girl summer. Which I
Hot
do
girl summer.
weird.
Yeah, it was supposed to be wallet summer. I don't really know what happened to that one.
Never heard of that one. That's wallet summer.
Yeah.
Chic
Yeah,
thing.
I think it was creator coin summer in retrospect.
Definitely.